pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which Okay, good evening, everyone. I'll make a motion to open up the town board meeting of January 21, 2025.
I'll second.
Call the question.
Bingham, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, aye.
Okay. So, announcements. Tax collector's notice. You want to speak on that?
Yes, so we are currently collecting taxes in my office, Monday through Friday, 9 to 2. Any payments that come in afterwards will be posted the next business day. We will be open late on January 31st from 4, and additional hours of 4 to 6, and March 31st from 4 to 5. Payments get made out to the Town of Monroe tax collector. We ask that you include your phone number on your checks should there be an issue and it needs to be returned. Us contacting you will hopefully help avoid additional penalties. Last day to collect taxes is March 31st. After that, payments will be going up to the county where they will be putting additional penalties on. So we want to try to avoid that. What else? Credit card payments, if you pay online. Credit card, they charge you 2.45% of the total bill. Debit is $3.95, and an e-check is $1.75.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk / tax collector. Okay, dial-a-ride new servicing times. If you haven't heard, reservations will be available as early as 6 a.m. This started on January 13th. Where they extended the service, and the last available reservation for a return trip will be at 6 p.m. from any location in your service area, including the Harriman train station. So thanks to Ed Morales, who's leading the charge over there. Appreciate all he's been doing. Winter weather alert from the Highway Department. Please refrain from leaving cars parked overnight. That's the parking notice. The winter driving tips, obviously watch for snow, ice, and black ice on the roads. Travel with caution. If you need to make an emergency call, that contact information is obviously 911. For Highway Department inquiries regarding snow removal, road conditions, or other winter-related questions, you can contact the Highway Department at 845-782-8583. Monroe Connect. So the town has partnered with GoGov for the creation and launch of Monroe Connect app. It's a valuable resource for easily accessing information and notifications relating to the town of Monroe. All community members and residents are encouraged to download this app, which will be available both on Apple and Android platforms.
Supervisor, I'd just like to add, I have some copies printed out as soon as you come in on the corner of the dais if anybody wanted that QR code. It's also available in board docs for those viewing at home.
Oh, okay. Last announcement is the Sacred Heart Blood Drive, which is happening Sunday, January 26th, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the school gym on 26 Still Road in Monroe, New York. You can sign up by scanning the QR on the posters that are around town, or you can make phone calls to a bunch of people who are also on the flyers. I'll give a couple numbers out. Aileen is at 781-0856. Tina is 783-3252. They encourage you to eat well and hydrate, bring a photo ID, make sure you feel good. If you're 17, you must be 17 or older, or 16 with a parental consent form. And they do have a minimum wage, and I believe it's $120. What's that?
Wait.
Minimum weight, yeah, thank you, sorry. The other thing is, we got a notice today from New York Blood Center. They're seriously down on their blood bank. I believe the blood bank for a couple of the types of blood is down to 1 to 3 days. So they encouraged us to get out there and, give blood and help someone else. Okay, next item up, public hearing. The public hearing, I'll make a motion to open the continuation of the public hearing regarding the zone change petition, Larkin Drive, SBL 2-1-29. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, call the question.
Am I?
Scancarello, aye.
Cardone, aye?
Richardson, I.
Okay,
No public comment.
nobody signed up?
That mic just needs to be turned on, too.
Pull it towards me, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it is.
And then if you just angle
There
it
you go.
up.
Good evening, my name is John First.
You can angle it up so you're not hunched over, John.
No, it's a requirement to stand like that,
There you go.
actually.
I'm an attorney at Catania Mann and Ryder. Again, my name is John First, represent the applicant property owner, Larkin Drive LLC. You may recall we submitted a petition to rezone approximately 10 acres from LI to HI. The HI allows a little more flexibility when we're trying to provide some more commercial development. We last appeared before this board in September of 2024, and the board had asked for some more information. So that's kind of what we did. We provided you some more information immediately after the meeting. I did reach out to your attorney. I did provide the names of 2 prospective tenants that are looking to locate on this property. So it's not a build-on spec. We do have 2 regional tenants that are very interested in locating here and would like to locate here, so we're catering this project to their needs. It's a large-scale development, as you may recall, therefore it's not really going to interfere with the village centers. In addition, you wanted some more information on the plans. Mike Morganti, the site civil engineer, had updated the plans and provided more detail. And third, and maybe most importantly, we were able to conduct a parking study during the holiday season with some surrounding shopping centers and stores to kind of see what the parking needs really are. And Ken Worsted had prepared a parking analysis, and he can summarize that real quick tonight. And all this information was submitted a couple of weeks ago. But for now, I'll just have Mike Morganti kind of step up and just kind of show you some of the details or changes that he made from the last time we were here in September.
Thank you, Tom.
This is actually in a perfect location for me, the microphone it is. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Michael Morgante, site civil engineer for this particular project. Some of the improvements that we made to the plan were with site layout and general parking. We worked with our traffic engineer who had made some suggestions. We heard some of the concerns from the town board and your consultants. So we have prepared now a concept grading plan for the site so you can kind of see how the site will start to look once it's actually graded and developed. It appears that we can complete the grading within the footprint that we originally set around the 10-acre project size. We've provided conceptual stormwater locations, so it appears there's adequate area to handle stormwater runoff from this particular project. We've prepared a slope analysis so that the town board and the planning board ultimately can see what the grades on the site look like. It's deceiving. The slopes on the site are 15% and less, which is really not steep. It's just that the property's pretty big and long. So by the time you get to the back, even like a 5 or 10% slope requires a lot of grading. We actually added some bus shelters and pull-offs along the property frontage on Larkin Drive. We thought that was a nice suggestion and inclusion into the concept plan. And just to remind the board that we've also spoken to Orange County Department of Environmental Facilities regarding the sewer connection for this particular project. So they provided input early on so that we know we ultimately can connect and how we will. And we've also got a well location approval from Orange County Department of Health. Again, These are things that are further down the road, but they are important to know that they are achievable at this initial stage. Just want to remind the board, too, we had a positive response from the county GML referral. They seem to support the project. And that's a general summary on my behalf of what has been done since I was here last. Glad to entertain any questions that you have before I pass it off to Ken Worsted, our traffic engineer.
I have a question.
Sure.
You have, John, I believe, is the one who said you have 2 tenants that you already are pretty secure in.
Correct.
How many other tenants? I don't remember exactly.
There's 4. How many
4
buildings
altogether?
There are three buildings.
3 buildings total.
Three
So-
separate. 2 of them are connected, 1 is disconnected, but the 2 that are connected actually are 2 buildings.
Talk into the mic.
There's one larger building in the back, and there's actually a fairly large building in the front, but that's split up into 2 different tenants in the front, or potential 2 different tenants. Potentially, yes, correct, yeah.
And you said that you were not publicly announcing those tenants at this time, but were you able to get those names to our
Yes.
attorney so we
Yes,
can
so,
know? Okay.
It's not really subject to FOIL because it's a trade secret, so.
Right, yeah.
I did send it on to your
Okay.
attorney, and I hope he sent it on to you folks.
No, we're doing a
Again,
betting pool, yeah. But I do have a question about sewer capacity. Were there any documents relating to that in the packet that I missed?
I have email correspondence.
Okay.
I want to say that would have been submitted, like, probably with the very first submittal we made, but
Okay.
I can certainly find that and resubmit it to you.
Yeah, that would just be
I could submit
great.
both the sewer information and the well information for you.
That would be great. We just get a lot of questions about sewer and water, as you can understand.
Give us a little synopsis of the traffic study.
We'll leave that to Ken Worsted. He'll come up.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Mike.
You can give it a go, Mike, if you want.
Good evening.
Good evening. Ken Worsted with Creighton Manning Engineering. We're the traffic consultant for the project. Parking, as we all know, the ability to go into a project or a site and find an empty space, go in, do your business, come out and leave. As traffic engineers, we use a lot of data from previous projects, other locations. The Institute of Transportation Engineers compiles a lot of that information into a book that we use to reference to say, here's a new site of a similar use, how much parking is it going to generate? We had done that with this project, and a lot of this data comes from, I would say, before the escalation in online shopping and Amazon and a lot of those deliveries coming straight to your house. I can speak from experience that my wife probably went out and only went to stores about for 50% of our holiday presents. Everything else kind of came in by delivery. And if we had looked at this project based on those IT numbers, we're going to need like over 300 parking spaces for the project to kind of meet that demand. Understanding, driving around some of the shopping centers here, there's a lot of extra parking out there, and do we really need that much parking here on this site? So we went through and looked at the parking demand at the Target Plaza. We looked at the BJ's, and we also looked at a business center over in KJ, right on Bakertown Road. And we collected data over the Thursday, essentially a week before Christmas, and the Sunday before Christmas, and looked at from 11 a.m. all the way to 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night to see how parking changed throughout those. We calculated how much parking was in demand per kind of square foot, so we broke it down. We excluded those businesses that were empty on the Target Plaza. Way at the far end, there's a couple of empty spaces there. And then we took those numbers and we applied them to this project to say, here's how much traffic or how much parking we think this project really needs. When we did that, we had estimated a demand of approximately 120 to 140 cars in a weekday situation and a Sunday kind of peak situation. Mike has not adjusted the site plan, but he's showing over 300 spaces on site. So we're about 200, a little more than 200 spaces more than we think we're going to need, on the project. So we listed that as over 100%, almost 200% surplus. So if we were to build that much, you would go out there and you would probably see about a third of the parking occupied and the rest of it just being empty space out there. With that, we looked at a couple of other conditions, but they all kind of told the same story, that the parking that's proposed on the site right now is more than we need. And we had recommended that as the applicant moves through the approval process, that they look at either land banking some spaces as a kind of just in case things change, and look to reduce some of that parking and perhaps improve some of the drop-off, the taxi, the Uber, the delivery kind of aspects of the project. So that, in summary, is kind of the overview of the traffic and parking, specifically parking.
Questions?
One thing I do want to say is the planning board also has, when they were discussing other applicants, they also said that something needs to be done. Seems our code right now requires too much parking. So land banking, I would definitely be in favor of if you get to that point where you're before the planning board.
And that, I think, is an issue with a lot of town codes. They may have been developed 20, 30 years ago and haven't been updated. Meanwhile, our references for parking continue, to be updated every 3, 4, 5 years. And I think in the last, 5, 6, 7 years, with the advent of Amazon and a lot of the delivery services, those numbers are just inflated. And I'll also say that at a time there was a lot of big name entities, businesses that wanted to have enough parking that if you were going there for holiday shopping, you found a spot. They didn't want you to drive in and look around and be like, I'm going to go somewhere else. I can't find a parking spot. So while 11 months of the year, it might be fine, you can find a parking space, no problem. There's that one that one holiday season where it was like, okay, you're really pushing the limit and we have what we need. But that was all before, deliveries and, I can order something
Online.
today and it'll be at my door tomorrow.
Right, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you make a good point regarding the planning board. We know there's a lot more details, a lot more study that has to be done. Eventually, the secret process before you guys make a decision on the rezone, but I guess we're kind of looking for direction as far as whether we're at that step, ready to refer it to the planning board to kind of take a deeper dive on some of these details.
Is there any intent, because we would eventually like Larkin Road lit up. There's no lights on it right now. Any intent to improve that, or maybe we if this goes through, we put that as a caveat to the.
That's the first I'm hearing about it, but I'll certainly convey that over to the client.
Okay.
And see what there is. I'm assuming the existing portion of Larkin Road is not lit up?
It's not lit up. There's no poles. It's not lit up. So.
Especially if you're going to have like a bus shelter or something like that. You don't want it to be in a dark area because it's the all for an accident to happen.
Right. I mean,
Right.
one potential solution off the top of my head is maybe establishing like a lighting district for the property owners.
I mean, it's kind of, I was speaking with State Senator Scoof's office regarding his streetlight grant initiative on whether the town could seek additional lighting and have that be discounted at 50%. I'm still waiting to hear, so it'd be interesting. I don't know if your client could pitch in costs for like the individual lighting district that you would occupy. Are you responsible for lighting up the parking lot? Yeah,
Yes,
and those
there'll be
costs?
as part of the site planning
Yeah.
process, there'll be a lighting plan. Generally, they don't want any lighting to spill outside of the property.
Yeah.
But yes, there'll be lighting on the building, there'll be lighting in the parking lot so that it's safe, but then not creating, it'll be shielded, tilted down, so that way it's.
Yeah, for the
dark sky
environment,
compliant
migratory
inside.
birds, it's a better initiative now. They have the LED street lights that are appropriately shielded so that insects and migratory birds are not affected. So that would be great, also, if
Yeah,
that's
honestly,
something you're
so-
adhering to.
This is the first time I've heard a request to kind of provide lighting on the public street, but we'll certainly convey that desire.
from the, I'm still up in the air on this personally. That's me personally. What I'd like to do is close the public hearing, if the board is open to that. And
If we close the public hearing, how long do we have to deliberate? Because I would just like to take a second look at some of the documentations before we set it on the agenda.
next meeting, if you can get it done by,
There's no mandate. to Close the public hearing. Is there a mandated
No,
time?
no mandate.
Okay.
okay, so I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on the Larkin Drive SBL 2-1-29.
Except for written comments.
Okay, we'll do that except for written comments for 15 days from today.
Second.
No, we have a second.
Oh.
Call the question?
Hingham, aye?
Cardone, aye?
Richardson, aye.
Okay, so moved. Thank you, gentlemen, very
Thank you.
much.
Have a good night.
Appreciate you being here. You too.
And
Okay, item 4.3 is a motion to open the continuation of the reopening of the continuation of the reopening of the continuation. I'm waiting for a response, Dennis. Of the public hearing for local law H-V2 of 2022 to amend Chapter 57 zoning concerning the regulations governing tree preservation.
I'll second.
Call the question.
Hingham, aye?
Scancarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, aye.
So moved.
no public comment.
No public comment. Dennis, I know you have to comment, buddy.
My document page is growing longer than any other, Dennis.
Dennis Fordham, Monroe Conservation Commission. I received the latest revision to the tree law on the 25th of January. It basically responds to all my comments, all the planning comments as best as I can see. I do have some other ongoing concerns. One of them relates to how this is going to be disseminated to the town, to property owners and the like. It's a far more stringent law than we had before. And I think this is going to be an issue because I think you're going to get a number of residents which will not be happy with these new laws. So it's important to get it out there and to make sure that the regulations of how it's complied are abided to. One of the things that's in there now is that if a resident or a developer wants to move even one tree or up to 3 trees, they have to submit a tree removal notification form to the town clerk. This will then be reviewed by the Conservation Commission and by the building inspector, not to say you can't do it, but just for advisory purposes and record purposes. I think this is reasonable. It's just a case of how do you get people to actually do this. One tree. If I got one tree which is 8 inches in diameter in my front yard, I really have to submit this form if I'm going to comply to the law. Is that what we really want? Max's comment to this, which you probably saw, he came just a week ago, was I'm quoting him now, I was considering an alternative, a requirement that places the onus on a commercial contractor to identify the size and number and trees that are to be taken out, even if it's only one tree. And he then goes on to say, after more dialogue, we would have to add an additional section entitled Responsibility to Report, and I would need to work with Brian to get this provision right. But if it makes sense, I think that we can get this together quickly. I think there's a lot of sense in saying that the onus should be on tree removal contractors, if that is practical to do.
All right, could you repeat that?
The onus is on who?
the tree removal contractors.
Oh, okay.
Yes, companies that come in
Companies
to
that do
remove the
this,
trees
and
should be aware of the town of
They
Monroe's
should-
tree ordinance, yes.
Just as if you want a new roof, that
Yes.
contractor that comes in knows full well he has to get a permit, or the resident has to get a permit to remove the trees. So the same would apply here. Comes in, sees you've got so many trees to remove, either he or would then require the property owner to get the appropriate forms completed. Or if it's more than 3 trees, it's a tree removal permit. That would seem to be reasonable, how easy it would be to do, given that the tree removal contractors are a mixed bag, to say the best. There are regular good firms that we all know about. There are other guys that just come and go that take down trees.
Well, the ultimate responsibility is not with the company who is contracted to do the job,
No.
but it is good to notice them, because a lot of work that I've actually had done on my own property, it's interesting and heartening to see that the contractors are usually aware of what requires a permit and what does not in
Yeah.
each municipality, so.
Yeah,
But it does fall back on the homeowner
I
themselves, the
think with tree
responsibility.
removal, I know in my own experience and neighbors' experience, get a guy to come and take the trees down, sure, they take them down. They don't ask you if you've got permission from the town or if it complies with the tree law. They'll just come in and do it, whatever you want. That's the situation now, generally speaking. If it's, if it's tied into a planning development project, that's a different story. So I think this is a significant issue. I think it's a wonderful thing to say, gee, if you want to take down one tree, you need to record it and so on. But how do you enforce it, and what is reasonable? So that's one of my concerns, and I think Max, I was hoping he'd be here tonight, but maybe you should consult with him again to see whether that's a practical thing to do. As an attachment to the tree law, there will be, and it's in there as attachment number 4 to Chapter 57, a listing of landmark, native, protected and specimen trees. This I have drafted now. You've had copies in the past. I'm assuming that maybe once the tree law is approved, then this listing of landmark, native, protected trees also would have to come to a board meeting to be reviewed, commented on and approved, because it's going to go into the law. So that would be an ongoing requirement.
I think I had sent you this in the past, and I've seen it in another tree law, that in addition to whatever the Conservation Commission deems as appropriate for our specific town, that the DECs, say the New York State's or downstate version of the DEC's protected trees, can actually just be integrated and then instructed that the code enforcement officer follows the updated database actually created.
Right.
And I think I'd sent so that you guys have that to you early on.
What's in there now does comply with, let me quote here, try and find it, the New York Flora Atlas. This is produced by the New York Flora Association. That I believe is the definitive document for identifying trees,
Yes,
bushes, and
and-
so on. So that's what's in there now.
Yeah.
And no more, no less.
Mhm.
So in any case, that document needs to be reviewed and then subsequently approved and go into the law. One other, the planning board came up with an interesting comment to even add to that list native regulated trees.
Comment number 8.
Yeah, okay, to non-invasive 10 inches greater. But this is this is they're talking about bushes and shrubs as opposed to trees. I'm intrigued that they would want to add that to the list.
Shrubs? Adding shrubs to the list?
Yeah, that's what the planning board wanted, and that's what's
Yeah,
gone into the revised
native
law.
shrubs. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that I guess it's landscaping code. Does that fall under the tree code, or do we have to make a bump out for
Well,
the planning board?
The listing of landmark, the listing of the native trees that's in there now does not include shrubs and bushes. It does not include that. And generally speaking, in practical terms, I don't really think it's an issue. because there again, they're supposed to be more than 6 inches in diameter and more than 10 feet high. That's what's in there now. And, you know, there are very few bushy shrubs that
Oh,
would
you're saying
come
they
into that
should
category.
not fall, shrubs should not fall in the tree code?
I
I mean, yeah,
I'll-
I would that
I'll-
agree.
I'll defer to others on this, but if that's absolutely required, then maybe some of those or those that would be affected should go into that listing of native trees,
Yeah,
which
maybe.
would add bushes and shrubs. I think it is starting to split hairs, quite
I think
frankly,
so.
on this. I don't think it's a real issue, but if that's what's wanted, you know,
It's hard for me to think off the top of my head of really precious shrubs where we're already quite overtaxing, I believe, the building department with this one tree form. And I'm actually wondering if there's a digital way to have people actually say, hey, I'm knocking down one of my trees or up to 3 of my trees without needing a permit. Without, you know, so that it would incentivize people to actually track it. We could actually track it, and that Ben's office not inundated with paperwork. So
but it's not for him to, who would actually do that tracking? Doesn't have to be Ben, could be the town clerk.
don't wish that on
It
her.
could even be the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
I don't see that as a real big deal. It's just, are you going to enforce it and how are you going to do that? And so on.
We have quite a lot of people who live in Monroe.
Yeah, I mean,
So.
you know,
It's a lot of shrubs to keep
Yeah.
track of.
yeah. So I think shrubs is a little bit of splitting hairs, but you know, if that's what's wanted and if that doesn't get changed, then I can probably dig up a few shrubs that would come into that category and add them to the list. But the other requirement that changed from the existing law, if there are more than 25 regulated trees that have to be removed, then it would go to the planning board, regardless of what else is going on that site. The planning board wanted that reduced to 10 trees. So if you're going to remove 10 trees from your site, then that automatically goes to the planning board. I guess the planning board's happy with that, because that could mean a lot more projects are going to go to the planning board.
Right, because if somebody wants to put up a in-ground pool and they happen to have a wooded lot,
Well,
they're probably going to cut more than 10 trees.
that's a very good point, which I don't think is too clear in the revised law. It's one thing saying I'm taking down more than 10 trees and that has to be reviewed by the planning board, but does that also mean that an associated project with that, like a pool or like a single-family home, right? Does that now go back to the building inspector, or does that whole project now have to be reviewed by the planning board? I don't think that's clear at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that can't be a burden to the homeowners.
no,
You know, if they're building a
absolutely.
pool or if even the builder, if he's building a home. Because if he's building a home, it was approved by the building inspector, and now if you're making him go to the planning board, you know,
But that-
now they have additional fees, and it just,
Yeah, this is 10 seems
Time.
low, and I have only an acre. And I'll have to tell you, I had to remove, unfortunately, 10 trees
10
that
is
were
not
dying.
much.
And I think I would be angry if I had to go
But
to the
that,
planning board.
that was in the planning board comments, and
Yeah.
that's what Max has changed the law to. 10 trees,
Yeah.
more than 10 trees goes to the planning board, okay?
Yeah,
Now, that could work if all the planning board does is to remove the removal of 10 trees, go through to check that it complies with the tree removal or refer it to us, whatever.
maybe a special
And then
process.
goes back to the building inspector for the
Yeah.
pool or the house or the garage, whatever he wants to put in there.
Because we've had a lot of tree death from ash borers and the
Yes.
the
but-
moths, and
Right,
They're
but
just killing
see, in that case, most of those will be classified as dead trees, so
Yeah.
they wouldn't.
oh, they won't.
Right.
Okay, excellent. So they're 10 live trees. Because the last time we spoke, I think that it was including all, a dead and alive, was Bonnie's comment that dead had ecosystem benefits. So we're now just 10 alive trees.
I don't recall that about. I mean, obviously, dead trees
Yeah.
do have other ongoing benefits, but I don't think that was the point. The point is, if I'm going to remove up to 1 tree, 3 trees, 25 trees, a number of them may be dead.
Okay.
Is it a requirement of the property owner to define which tree is dead, or should that come to the building inspector or the Conservation Commission? Or
Is that defined?
Dead trees are not included.
Okay, so
But
who's,
if if I'm a landowner and I want to remove 3 trees, right? And I submit this form, and then I or somebody from the Conservation Commission goes to look at it, one of those trees may be dead, and therefore it doesn't count.
Okay.
And also it wouldn't count, a dead tree doesn't count towards the in lieu cost or the replacement cost.
Right,
So-
but have we designated in the sense of when a homeowner is responsible for, applying to the building inspector for this permit, or for registering their one tree, which I'm assuming is a live tree, who's the designated point of contact who decides whether it is dead? Have we determined that? I haven't seen that.
It's in there as regards to defining that the tree has to be dead to be classified as a regulated tree. If it's dead,
And
it's not a regulated tree.
Are you the one that's going to go to people's property to define if it's dead?
If necessary, it could be the building inspector, it could be the landscape architect or the arborist that's been employed by the property owner. A good example is 12 Edgewood Road. They hired an arborist to come and do a review. He identified that a number of those trees were dead. He identified that a number of those trees were non-native. So that was a good detailed report. Doesn't necessarily happen.
But at present, we have not defined a person who determines whether the tree is dead.
Not specifically, but it's implied in terms of when you get a tree removal permit, right? Because that tree removal permit implies that you have complied with the tree law, which then defines a dead tree, and that's not included. So that are my questions. Is it 10 trees? Is it 25 trees? Does it have to come back to the building inspector when the planning board has looked at these 10 trees that have got to be removed? All this seems to be a little bit convoluted. Otherwise,
I mean, if it goes to the planning board, eventually it's got to get back to the building inspector.
eventually it has, yes. But then normally if it goes to the planning board, they're going to look at that house, property, whatever, and see that it does comply with the building codes. Because when it goes back to the building inspector, he then assumes that everything on those drawings has been approved. It has been approved by the planning board. He doesn't have to think about, now I've got to review it to make sure that I've got enough outlets in the room, or the plumbing, or the septic tank is the right size. That's no longer his responsibility. He just has to make sure that when it's constructed, it meets those requirements.
Do you think it best that we have a sit-down with Max?
Oh, I think so. Maybe with the planning board or with Bonnie.
Yeah, Bonnie too.
I mean, this is putting a much bigger burden on them, and I'm not.
It's also putting more burden on the homeowner. I mean, this is sort of a new experience for homeowners in Monroe, where usually they avoid taking things to the planning board.
Well, if they meet the law now, says if you're going to put, depends on the acreage, but it's 3, 5, 6 trees. If you're going to take out more than that, then you have to get a tree removal permit. So in that respect, it's not that much different. It's just, does it go to the building
Well, it
inspector?
doesn't
Does it go to the
stop
planning
at just
board?
attending a planning board meeting. I'm assuming that if you remove, 10 or more trees, say 11 trees, then the planning board will suggest replacements
Yes.
and other remediations.
Yeah. So the planning board, I think they're saying, no, let us, planning board, be responsible for the trees as opposed to the building inspector. Is that what they're really saying? I think we need a discussion.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
let's
that's
do
a
this,
discussion.
Dennis. Let's keep the public hearing open. We'll keep it open until the 24th of February, and we'll try to sit down and get a meeting set up with Max.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to come and attend that. And
Okay.
then a representative from the planning board, I would suggest.
Yeah, okay,
Because this is definitely changing it for them.
yeah, okay. All right, so,
Otherwise, I think we're almost there.
yeah. All right, so I'll make a motion to keep open the continuation of the public hearing regarding Local Law H-V2 of 2022 to amend Chapter 57 concerning regulations governing tree preservation
Second.
on February 24th, 2025 at 7 p.m. or immediately thereafter.
Thank you, Dennis.
Call the question?
Am I?
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, aye.
Okay, so moved. Item 5.1 is the acceptance of the January 2nd, 2025 minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Call the question.
Bingham, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, aye.
Okay. Okay, we got it. Next up is the general fund abstract, audit of claims. General fund abstract 25-2. And I lost my, there we go. Town of Monroe, Town Board of Town of Monroe requests the approval of abstract 25-02. Wait a minute. 25-2 of the general fund containing checks 36226 through checks 36271 totaling $273,339.20. Do I have a second?
Discussion. I'm looking at the check 36231, Anthony Cardone, November 2024, mileage of $103. I don't have the abstract specifically, sorry, the voucher in front of me. Does that include WTBQ?
Which,
Check 36231, Cardone, November 2024, mileage.
November? Yeah, there are probably some mileage there.
We discussed explicitly that this would be reimbursed for the public benefit for town-only and educational purposes as outlined in our mileage policy. And
That's not specifically outlined in
yes,
our
it is.
mileage policy.
Excuse me. It actually is. The mileage policy that Councilwoman Bingham brought forth and expressly discussed with you, and then you announced subsequently that it was for town use and that the town taxpayer is paying for it because it is to promote things like dial-a-bus, government-only purposes, and that is what taxpayer money is supposed to go toward. I know, because I was listening, and I also have a recording, that you endorsed, I believe, 2 political candidates right before the November election. So I do not believe that taxpayer dollars should go toward the town supervisor in his official capacity endorsing political candidates.
Is that the only thing that was discussed in the meeting?
Does that matter?
Yes, it does.
Why? Why
Because-
would that be? And of
because-
course it
Because
does.
if I had 80%, 90% of the meeting.
I don't think
where
you
we
understand the
discussed-
Hatch
I'm not done speaking.
I was literally in the middle of
No,
speaking
no,
and
no,
I didn't
you asked
see
me a
the floor.
question, and I was
I
trying
was
to
actually
answer.
just having the floor.
Yeah.
Can I let you know when
But
I'm done?
did you ask me a question?
I honestly can't remember at this
Well,
point.
yeah, that was only 30 seconds ago. You did.
So you are, what, trying to make a formal complaint with Ellen more legitimate? Okay, I'm going to finish speaking, and then you can answer my question that I don't remember asking. But whatever it was, I'm sure you'll answer me. There's something called the Hatch Act and the Little Hatch Act, and we also have an ethics code. Formal taxpayer dollars should not go toward endorsing any political candidates. We are not allowed in many other capacities to endorse political candidates. I'm not allowed to speak about political campaigns, endorse, seated here. So when you discussed and made that pledge, I would say, to Councilwoman Bingham when she first brought this to the dais last summer, I would say, you did, in fact, tell us that this was going to be for town purposes. And the town money does not go toward endorsing one political candidate or another. It does matter. If you talked about dial-a-bus, if you talked about town initiatives the entire time, it's actually worse because you made it appear that from your official position as town supervisor, as your government job, that you were endorsing those people. Not your political position, not your personal position, but it's actually worse that you just admitted to using what
Never-
we all pay for
I never
with our
admitted
tax
endorsing.
dollars. Okay, so you're denying the fact that you made an endorsement.
I am not denying or admitting.
Well, I cede my time. If you want to respond, that's your purview.
You know what? Sometimes it's better to sit there and look ignorant than to open up your mouth and remove all doubt, so I will not speak to what you just said.
I want to make a motion to remove the November 2024 mileage until we can review that voucher. As my right as a town council person, I'm allowed to bring witnesses and evidence forth that certain vouchers are not legitimate. So I would like to motion to table this until this can be determined as legitimate or not.
Wait, you made a motion first to
Um,
remove it, and now you're
excuse me.
making a motion to table it. What
Then I
is it?
can make a motion to alter the motion within the motion. That's the only motion I'm allowed to make within a motion is to alter the original
Why don't you
motion.
start from zero and make your motion now? So there's no confusion, because you have a habit of creating that. But go ahead.
Thank you for being so rude. Mr. Nugent, I'm within a motion, and the only motion I can make is to alter the original motion, or because I have the right as a town board member to enact certain authorities over vouchers and the abstract. How does that become invoked?
Not really a motion within a motion unless somebody seconded the first motion. Otherwise,
Did we? I
you're-
think they did, yeah.
we seconded.
Someone seconded it, and that's when I called
Who?
discussion.
Mary, did you second it?
No, it was
I
Sal, and then I called discussion. I didn't just start talking.
Somebody seconded or no?
No,
Well,
nobody
Val-
seconded it.
Yes, they did. Valerie's keeping the minutes.
Okay, so what,
No. Nobody seconded her motion.
No.
Not her motion.
That's what I'm
The
asking.
original, we are
first original
inside a
motion.
motion.
The original motion.
right, so you
The original motion was to
seconded,
approve
right.
the
So
abstract.
she's looking to amend that motion.
She is, not me.
Correct.
Yes.
So
That's the only option I have, because it was seconded. I'm
Correct.
within a motion. I'm looking for my options to invoke this authority that I have as a board member to inspect whether this
right.
voucher is
What I hear is you
legitimate.
want to make a motion to amend to
Is that my only option? I can't just start a new motion.
not with one pending.
Right, so my motion within this motion is to alter the original motion as stated, excluding check ID 36231.
Right, so now the motion is an amendment. If you wish to approve that amendment, you would vote aye. If you do not wish to approve the amendment, you would vote no. If there's a second on this motion being made, is there a second?
I will second. Bingham will
All right,
second.
so now you just take a vote on whether or not to amend the underlying motion.
The underlying motion.
So if you say yes, you're saying I want to amend it to what Councilwoman Richardson
And the
said.
result is basically, as I said, that we approve the abstract, excluding 36231 until evidence can be brought forth that validates or invalidates it.
Right, so an aye vote would carry that out.
Question?
Aye.
Scancarello, nay. Cardone, nay.
Richardson, aye.
Motion fails, and now you need to vote on the
Abstract.
underlying, the main motion. Yes.
Call the question.
Bingham, nay.
Okay. Go ahead. Scancarello, aye. Cardone, aye.
Richardson, nay.
Okay, so the abstract doesn't pass. We'll hold all those checks. Item 6.2 is an escrow fund abstract. Be it resolved that the Town Board of Town of Monroe requests approval of abstract 25-2 escrow fund containing checks 2190 through 2195 totaling $22,683.14. Call the question.
Aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, aye.
Next up. Mine?
Sal,
Yeah.
he's sitting back, George.
Okay.
Okay.
Item 7.1 is an intermunicipal agreement for dog control services. Before you, you have an agreement with the town of Woodbury for an intermunicipal agreement for dog control services between the town of Monroe and the town of Woodbury at an annual contractual fee of $31,000 for the period of January 1, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. I'll make that motion to, well, I'm sorry, I can't, because I have to sign it. Can you make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to, for the supervisor to sign the intermunicipal agreement for the dog control services from 5 to December.
Second?
Bingham, second for discussion. Was there any reach out to Warwick or any other municipality that has dog control services? Because this is getting a little expensive now. I just want to know if there were any other municipalities that, like I said, offer this service. I know Warwick definitely does.
I didn't reach out to them this year, but in the past, Warwick did not want to entertain it.
That was before they finished building their shelter?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a large, nice renovated space. However, I mean, does this also include after-hours services, or that is left to the police?
Yes, did it after our services.
Because it would be a drive for Warwick to come and pick up a dog. Is that included in this? I thought the last time that we approved this that residents were instructed to call the state police. Do we get a dog catcher out of this?
Call Woodbury, or we call the state police, and the state police farm it out to Woodbury.
Okay, so it would actually not include a dog catcher, so the state police would come and
No.
they would,
I just said.
they farm it out to Woodbury. I don't know what that means. It's colloquialism.
That means they farm it out to the Woodbury, and Woodbury will send someone.
I think for the following year, this should definitely go out as, I don't know if RFP is the correct terminology, Mr. Nugent, if we were to entertain Warwick or some other municipality, would that be an RFP?
You don't have to because it's intermunicipal. It can just be informal discussion or sending out an email, but you wouldn't have to issue an RFP since it's an intermunicipal agreement. If you wanted private services, then you would need an RFP.
I said, just for this year, I think,
It says dogs during business hours will be brought to the Woodbury Animal Shelter located on Chunamong Road by a New York State police officer or a Monroe employee designated by the town board. And then after normal business hours, the animal control officer of Woodbury will be contacted to arrange for pickup or delivery of the dog to the Woodbury Animal Shelter by contacting the Woodbury Police Department. So during the day, we don't have a dog catcher service, but only after hours we can, that seems odd. Is that correct?
Got it.
There have been mistakes.
Call the question?
Bingham, aye.
Scancarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richards and I with the support that we should look into renegotiating this next year.
Item 7.2 is Haiji a part-time building clerk, approving her for the position of part-time clerk, building department, at an hourly rate of $23.50 and an employment start date of February 3rd, 2025. Haiji has been approved for this position by the Orange County Department of Human Resources.
I'll second.
Call the question?
Bingham, aye.
Scancarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richards and I.
Now, in addition to this, under 7.2 also, Madam Clerk, today we did receive pre-approval from Orange County Department of Human Resources for hiring Gwendolyn Rios for the position of part-time clerk, building department, at an hourly rate of $23.50 and an employment start date of January 30th, 2025. Like I said, Gwendolyn has been pre-approved for this position by the Orange County Department of Human Resources. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion, does that mean there are going to be two part-time?
Yeah, they're going to be two part-timers, probably working a total of 4 days out of the 5.
So one might work Monday, Wednesday, another one
That's
might
up to
work
Ben,
Tuesday,
yep.
Thursday, whatever he feels the workflow needs.
It's up to Ben and what works within their schedules.
Okay, all right,
Very, very extremely qualified, both of them.
right, if they're approved by Orange County.
Call the
And-
question?
One other question. Just to confirm, she's also getting the $23.50?
Yes.
Gwendolyn?
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
Call the question?
Bingham, aye.
Scancarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richards and I.
Okay. Code of Ethics training. Anne Marie has reached out to the gentleman who did our last one, and she's waiting to try to coordinate a date with that. We have forms here that have been modified, I think, a little, and the training would include actually the filling out of those forms. No motion to be made, just for discussion purposes. Item 7.4 is the use of the senior center for the Town of Monroe Republican Committee. Be it resolved that the Town Board of Town of Monroe approves the request from the Town of Monroe Republican Committee to use the senior center located at 101 Mine Road, Monroe, New York, the third Thursday of each month at 7 p.m. at $25 room rental rate.
I'll second.
Discussion, second for discussion. I notice the certificate of liability only goes through March of this year. So we can't really approve April through December until we get a new certificate.
Okay, I'll modify it to say that the last 9 months would be approved as long as a new insurance certificate is provided.
Thank you.
Mr.
Is there-
Nugent? Oh,
What's that, Mary?
go ahead, Val, you want to
I
go?
said thank you.
I was just going to ask if members of the organization can vote or make the motion.
If there's any
That's
Pecuniary
ridiculous.
interest.
That's really a ridiculous question.
Well, I was told that I have to recuse myself from voting on an ethics complaint that I submitted when it's actually in the code that I'm obligated to submit queries that appear unethical. So, because of the perception that anyone involved with it is unethical, so I'm just asking.
Don't see how the two relate, but there's no financial interest in approving the use of the senior center being a member of a committee that,
Okay.
I don't know if anybody would be able to, if that were the case, if you were part of any organization.
No, I mean, we have a member of the planning board who works at a company that, it's obviously a corporation. He gets up and leaves the room. He doesn't even weigh in on it, so that's just my question.
Yeah, that's a specific conflict in the code of ethics, that
Yeah.
you can't appear before a board when you're a member of a private entity or organization that does business before the board or
Right.
has business with the town.
Right.
But I don't see a conflict with the approval of the use of the senior center under these circumstances.
I believe 2 years ago, the Democratic Committee also had a motion to use the senior center.
I wasn't on the board then, so I probably would have recused myself on making the motion, but that's, as Brian has said before, their decision.
Call the question.
Bingham, aye.
Scancarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, aye.
You can vote no if you want.
Just asked an ethical question.
7.5, Employee Handbook, Sections 802 through 804. This is discussions regarding Sections 802 through 804 of the Town of Monroe Employee Handbook and the proposed policy revision to change the wait period for a full-time new employee, paid vacation, sick, and personal leave from 6 months of continuous service to 3 months of continuous service to align with the 3-month wait period for benefits eligibility. So essentially what we're trying to do is change the fact that if somebody is hired January 1, they don't have to wait till July 1 to be able to use vacation, personal, or sick time. They would only have to wait to April 1, 3 months. Questions? Anybody have a problem with it?
No, this also covers civil service as well, or does that have its own set of requirements?
Everybody here is,
Okay, no, well, no. Not everyone needs an exam, and
everyone's a civil service employee here. We're all pre-approved by civil service except the board.
aren't there different classifications that have their own special set of requirements?
What?
Different levels of it where they require different, they have their own requirements corresponding to different levels. There are some employees that need to take examinations, and there are others that do not, and that are ranked, yeah.
Competitive versus non-competitive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
competitive
okay.
and non-competitive.
But that's what so it's all the same in terms of leave and benefits is what I'm basically asking. There's no
Other than the
specials.
union.
Yeah, the unions
Well, we
wouldn't,
don't have. that's
unions
not-
wouldn't be affected by this because they have their own contracts. So union employees would not, unless they choose to negotiate with the town and accept that. So this would only apply to non-union town employees.
We need a distinction. It just says employee, that's what,
Well,
I'm just
it's
bringing it
already
up
in the
because it
handbook.
says full-time new employee paid vacation. So we're just adding, is there a
In the handbook.
change? You've already modified it and we're
While she's
approving the new handbook.
Yeah, there's a handbook change, but the
Okay.
handbook already recognizes that it doesn't apply to union employees where there's a
Okay, thank
collective
you.
bargaining agreement.
Motion to approve the handbook change. What do I say? Be it resolved that the Town Board of Monroe approves the handbook change set forth in 7.5? I just made the motion. Councilwoman Bingham, you want to second it?
Or I'll second it.
Call the question? Because it doesn't matter. He left the room and made a comment as he left the room, and I don't think it's respectful in the slightest, what he keeps muttering under his breath. I did call the question, so
Yeah, but no one's been designated to take over, so you can't call the question because
that's,
you're not.
anyone can call the question.
No, somebody's presiding, and the presiding officer stepped out of the
Well,
room.
the
so
acting supervisor
the
is not here.
first course, if you want to proceed, would be to vote a new presiding officer.
We made the motion.
Call the question?
Bingham, aye.
Scangarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, aye.
Who seconded that, please?
Councilwoman Bingham seconded.
Thank you.
Item 7.6. Madam Clerk, do you want to talk to this, because it's for general code?
Yes. So I need a motion to approve the general code estimate to update the town code to include local laws 5 through 8 of 2024. And the estimate is between $2,235 and $2,770. So I'm just looking for approval
Motion,
for those.
I'll second.
call the question.
Dollar amount, not to exceed 2770, or,
Yeah, for the motion, yeah.
yeah, okay, then aye.
Scangarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
I'm just having a problem with the fact that you didn't say it as an entire motion, that it is being written down as not to exceed.
Yes, I have that
Okay.
written down.
Thank you. And then Richardson, aye.
Okay, item 7.7, Lucas Moran Water Certification Course. This is a resolution approving Lucas Moran to attend the Grade C Water Certification Course from January 21st, 2025 through January 24th, 2025 at SUNY Morrisville in Morrisville, New York. The 4-day initial certification course is designed to meet the New York State Department of Health requirements to receive the Grade C Water Treatment Operator Certification. Registration fee was $600. Hotel accommodations for 3 nights is $255. And the meal reimbursement is not to exceed the current meal allowance schedule. He's up there, he took one of the highway vehicles up there. So I'll make that motion.
So then we don't have to do the mileage, if it's a...
No, he
Yes.
took one of the highway
Then
vehicles.
that's why I'm saying we don't have to do the
Yeah,
mileage, so 800, so $950 total, including meals?
800 and, well, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, 950,
Meals are
not
going to
to
be,
ex-
it's going to be more than that. I mean,
There's a, Are we saying that we're just approving, the meal allowance schedule? So if he has receipts that exceed what we've already outlined, we don't
Yeah.
need to give an exact.
I don't think we need to put a limit on that. I mean,
Well, I'm
It-
just
it
looking
is-
for the total. You just want to do the 600 and the 255 for the hotel?
yeah, and then meal
Okay.
reimbursement is not to exceed the allowance.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it was not a
Yeah.
not to exceed amount. So for $855, yeah, I'll second.
Call the question?
Bingham, aye.
Scancarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, aye.
So moved. Item 7.8 is a resolution for Homeland Towers LLC and Infra Towers LLC. It's a bond replacement. This is basically a transfer of ownership. I'll make the motion that says, be it resolved that the town board hereby accepts a replacement removal bond for the cell tower at 24 to 26 Strauss Lane from Infrared Towers LLC, herein referred as Infra, dated December 19th, 2024, in the amount of $70,000 to replace the prior removal bond from Homeland Towers LLC in the same amount regarding the tower, and be it further resolved that the town acknowledges receipt of the bill of transfer of such tower from Homeland to Infra, effective December 13th, 2024, and be it further resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the town clerk to accept the infra bond and return the original replaced bond to Homeland.
I'll second.
Call the question?
Bingham, aye.
Scancarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Aye.
Okay. Up next is the New York State Department of State Local Government Efficiency Grant Program. So the town of Monroe is, let me just make sure this is the right one. Yeah, so this is the one where the town of Monroe is partnering with the town of Woodbury to obtain a grant which would, in essence, help install speed bumps on key roadways leading to school, purchasing and installing highly visible school zone signage to increase driver awareness and promote pedestrian safety, and acquiring and replacing speed radar signs near schools in both towns to encourage speed limit compliance and reduce vehicular risks.
Second for discussion. Monroe Woodbury School, I believe school districts are also allowed to be part of this LGEG grant program. Would it be prudent to include them as well?
Yeah, we can include them, that's not a problem. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Simply because maybe they have some other things besides speed bumps, I don't know.
When is the
Well,
deadline?
They have flashing signs, which we're working on
Right.
for the Woodbury Common area. They have and it's not just for schools. I mean, there's a couple of roads in the town of Monroe I'd like to put some flashing lights on. So
When is the deadline for this?
the deadline for this grant, there's two deadlines. We're trying to get the one in for the 24th, which is this Friday. There's another one, if we don't make that deadline, we can apply for the cost of the planning of it, and then apply next January.
Okay, thank you. I also attended this seminar. They'd given one and let everybody know that this was opening. And the way that I perceived this grant, again, because it is called the Local Government Efficiency Grant Program, is to reduce redundancy. And so examples that they had given of successful applications where I thought we might direct our attention as it hit close to home to many of the public comments made over the last year was, for just one example, was that in a county, the county government was able to acquire a grant that solidified or consolidated all of the municipal code enforcement departments, and they were able to reduce costs for countywide, the taxpayers in each municipality, rather than each municipality having their own code enforcement department. It also has been used to combine and expand police force operations in, say, a village where the village has a police force, yet similar to us, the town does not. Or in the case of the village of Monroe having its own code enforcement department and us having our own code enforcement, say funding a joint software or a joint code enforcement venture. It is really supposed to fund and remove redundancies, which is why it mentions government efficiency. So while I do think it's worthwhile to install speed bumps and, for the safety, having highly visible school zone signage, I don't see the aspect of the town of Monroe. It's its own roads and streets. It has its own school zones, and Woodbury does not overlap with that. So while we both need these things, it doesn't really, what aspect is efficient and reducing redundancy where we would have an IMA or a partnership together?
Call the question?
As long as the school district included.
Yeah,
aye.
we'll include them.
Okay. Aye.
Scancarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, nay.
Can I ask one other thing? Since
Yeah.
you said you can do an application for planning for next year, could we do that application for possibly a consolidation of police forces with one of the villages or both of the villages?
Should ask the village, but I would like to look into
I
that.
could ask that.
Reach out?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll reach out, I'll ask. We'll comment on that on the 3rd.
Thank you.
Okay, the resolution concerning impacts of efforts to electrify highway vehicles. Okay, so essentially, the county sent this up to New York State, and this is a resolution concerning the impacts of efforts to electrify highway department vehicles by adoption of the Advanced Clean Truck Rule. We took that same resolution and just changed the wording in it regarding the town of Monroe. You basically have it before you. I can read the therefore. This is something that's going to be extremely costly to the town. It's another unfunded mandate. It is going to be something that if we have to do, it will also include us most likely having to change all the guardrails within the town because of the electric vehicle weight limits not being up to the specifications of the current guardrails. At this month's AOT meeting in Cornwall, the speakers will actually be Eric Denanga from County Public Works, Pat Patterson, our highway superintendent, and Tom Gershwin, the highway superintendent in Cornwall, and they're going to address this. So I'll read the therefore ases, the therefores. Be it resolved that the Section 1, the above whereas clauses are incorporated herein as if set forth in full. Section 2, the Town of Monroe of New York State calls the governor, the New York State Department of Transportation and New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Public Service Commission, commissioners, and legislative leaders to A, commit to providing support for addressing these concerns in the regulatory and implementation process, and to dedicate the funding necessary to fully cover the county's costs for complying with the state mandates under the CLCPA. B, consider a pause or suspension of the implementation of the Act until there is strong evidence that the state has in place the necessary direct financial assistance and incentives charging infrastructure necessary. and can definitively determine the vehicle manufacturers are prepared to effectively supply the New York State market without disruption to the critical work needed to maintain the state's vast and aging infrastructure. And C, to recognize the highway construction, maintenance vehicles, and equipment are critical to government's mission to maintain a safe and functional transportation system by designating these municipally owned vehicles and equipment as a category among transit buses, motor coaches, and emergency vehicles, and thus exempt from Act regulations. Section 3, that the town clerk shall forward copies of this resolution to Governor Kathy Hochul, the New York State Legislature, and the Commissioners of New York State DOT, New York State DEC, NYSERDA, PSC, and all other deemed necessary and proper. Section 3, the town supervisor and any other officer or employee, as directed by the town supervisor, are hereby authorized to take any and all necessary actions to carry out the provisions of this resolution. Section 5, this resolution shall be effective immediately.
Ingham will second. Discussion?
Okay.
Yeah, discussion.
I actually did see quite a while ago that even a Tesla ran through a guardrail, a guide rail. It's not a guardrail, it's a guide rail. So I agree with you that there certainly would be a lot of improvements that would be necessary. Also, the fact that, based on today's weather, electric vehicles are not the best solution. So I agree with this resolution.
Discussion, yeah. I don't quite understand the role that the town is playing here, and maybe you could clarify, because I read, there's so many whereases, that essentially you're saying that the cost to the town, like when you announced this before reading it, that the cost to the town would rise if this mandate went through. But when I read the actual act, it so far, unless I'm missing something, is not mandating the town to purchase electric vehicles, is it?
In the way it's worded is over a period of time, we're mandated to purchase.
The municipality is mandated to purchase, or that the dealerships and the manufacturers are mandated to produce?
Both.
Okay. And what exactly are our limits? Because that's not listed here. What are we required to purchase, and in what time frame?
Currently, you had to purchase, I believe it was 5% of your fleet, and if that didn't come into play, they could withhold you ordering any other trucks. So until you do that, you can't do it. But over time, they're looking to make all your vehicles electric. And the cost of that is going to be astronomical, because we're going to have to be putting charging stations over at the highway department.
Yeah, there's a lot of associated costs with that.
Excuse me?
There's a lot of associated
Well,
costs.
let me finish. You're going to have to retrain your mechanics so that they are up to snuff on the electric vehicles and the batteries. There's the additional cost of the vehicles, because if you're paying, I'm shooting numbers from the hip here. If you're paying $300 now for a truck, electric, you might be paying $375. And you might have to have more vehicles than you currently had to service roads in a snowstorm, because the vehicles are only on the road for an hour and a half to 4 hours before you have to recharge them.
This is by 2040? 5% of the fleet by 2040?
That's what she currently has in place. No, I'm sorry, 5% of the fleet, I think, is in 2028.
Anybody tell me?
Doesn't state it in here, but when I was at a breakfast meeting with the highway superintendents,
Okay.
one of the companies there had said that it was 5% by 2028.
I oppose, because just the cost of the vehicle alone, like you said, we would not be able to accommodate that at this time.
Then can we call the question and move on?
But I do want to state that while it can be expensive, we have a large surplus of energy credits, and so transitioning some of our fleet to electric could do us good, and we should actually weigh those financial costs on a long-term scale. So you can
Call
call
the
the
question.
Hingham, aye.
Scangarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, aye.
Okay. Item 7.11, it's kind of moot because it's past the 30-day period. The Village of KJ had sent this out, and we really just would have had to respond yea or nay if approving them as lead agency.
More information.
Okay. Item 7.12 is the Water District electricity costs. I think Councilwoman Bingham.
Send you an email back on January 15th, which I have given copies to the board members as well as the town clerk and Mr. Nugent tonight. Basically,
Fortunately, your tax is not.
no, I just gave the email out. I didn't give the attachment.
So yeah, I
but-
don't have your.
I can give that to you, no problem. But basically, these are the dollar amounts, and this is for over 3 years, basically. The analysis went through October. So all I'm asking is that the water districts, that's 1, 2, 8, 12, 14, come out of the solar farm. It's just costing them too much money. So my motion is to remove the water districts from the solar farm.
Where would those additional costs be placed?
Right now, it's an excessive burden on the water districts. For the 3 years that Water District 14 was part of this solar farm thing, they could have easily used that money to pay for their water meters. You know, we always talked about getting more revenue. We can sell some parking spaces. Electricity. This is also a double tax to the residents in the water districts because like the highway and senior center, during budget times, it was discussed that their overall expenses are paid for either by county sales tax or property tax. And these water districts are also, these residents are also paying property taxes and paying sales tax. So it's a double tax on them. So my motion simply is to remove them from the solar farm. And as Councilwoman Richardson said, maybe we should put in some charging stations and use up some of those credits and try to figure things out. I do have a second thing from Melissa. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing her last name, Zost.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Their firm could propose a consulting fee. They could look into the solar farm in greater detail. But my motion right now is simply to take these water districts out of that solar farm.
I also spoke with Melissa, our representative rather of our outside accounting firm. I also spoke with Roberta and Councilwoman Bingham about this matter. And I have been looking at the solar farm data for the last 4 years as a whole. And it's much more complicated than just the water districts, as each town account, every single municipal account is enrolled in the solar farm, and every town account that is directly and completely town-owned is buying the kilowatt hours produced at the 813 Lakes Road Solar Farm, which at least is a brownfield remediation site. So we have that it's producing green energy where there used to be a dump site. So that is a positive effect that the town is benefiting from. And we actually qualify for some clean energy community grants and some climate smart community grants subsequently. It's a contract obligation and a utility. And again, it's much more complicated than the analysis that I'm seeing in front of me and the analysis that I was provided last time. Unfortunately, the back of the envelope math that we were, analyzing when this first came up during budget time has the numbers as 256% more for a several month period, which I took a look at and is not accurate. That number is 256% of the other number, and it is 156% more. So when telling residents, that they're paying a certain amount, I think we have to be careful because I have not completed my full analysis with the solar farm as a whole, and I do not think that you can look at it in piecemeal whatsoever, because I can't tell I don't have your spreadsheet in front of me, so I can't tell if you compared just kilowatt hours billed.
No, I just took the O&R charge and what the districts were charged
Including
by
delivery?
finance for Soul River, their Soul River share.
So you compared the O&R charges on each metered account, including delivery,
The total bill,
the total bill,
the
okay,
total bill.
to the Soul River charges.
Yes.
And yes, they are paying certainly more, and every single town account is paying more. They're also buying more energy. So they buy, let's say, 250,000 kilowatt hours of energy in the summer, every single town account, and we now have in excess of $265,000 of O&R credit. The town I reached out to that has an identical solar farm runs this at a lower capacity where they use the solar kilowatt hour credit that is monetized at the beginning of this process. And again, it's much more complicated because there's an exchange rate of what
And that's why
yes.
I didn't get into the exchange rate. I just looked at the bottom line of the O&R bill and the bottom line of what finance had calculated for their Soul River
But the
charge.
problem is that, once again, we cannot negate this contract as it has a large, in the millions, penalty. So there's no way to vacate this contract easily. I doubt that they will easily renegotiate the PPA rate, which is the purchase agreement rate that we have, which causes a disparity between the monthly O&R retail rate that every other customer pays and our solar energy rate that we pay. And
Well, when these water districts have to pay for bonds for work that needs to be done, for water meters, some of these districts are also paying for their water rents because they have to purchase it from the village of Monroe. It's really, somebody who's living in a house assessed at $50,000, I'm sure if they could reduce their water bill, I'm sure they would appreciate it. Whether it's 200, 300, 400, or whatever, but the cost over 3 years, it's actually 3 years and like 9 months when I did 10 months when I did the analysis. It's staggering. So my motion still stands. I'd like to get the water districts removed.
so, again, it's more complicated than that. And water districts have already purchased it. Which one of the districts actually used.
All of them have used a credit, but that's only more in the winter months when the sun isn't shining.
No, the last 6 accounts, I believe, are the only accounts that have ever used the Soul River credit. We make.
The credits are out there, and we can't use them. That's the problem. That's why I said there could be a separate motion to have the consultants look at it, because I'm not reading a 280-page tariff that O&R has.
I did.
Understanding it, because there's a lot of stuff there I don't understand. So
So-
my motion stands.
I think that it's more complicated. I think it would be irresponsible to.
Do we have a
Yeah.
second on
Sorry.
Okay.
I think that we could maybe make the motion that we could look into what Melissa is proposing. Would anybody be open to,
Get a cost on that, Mary?
that's what I'm
I
saying.
could call Melissa, sure.
Middle of speaking. I'm literally asking
Okay.
if we could get a quote from Melissa.
Mary had mentioned that before.
Yeah, I actually
Yeah.
reached out to her individually and independently and have an email saying that
Okay.
she would like a board approval to get us an estimate and go forward with that. If we're
She doesn't
interested.
need board approval to get an estimate. She can get an estimate. Next item. Item 713 is the LGS-1 resolution for FOIL. Brian, I know this is basically, this was passed and it was, I'm assuming this is a resolution to transfer it? From-
LGS 1, no, this is, the LGS 1 is the retention schedule for the town. It's been adopted by the town previously. The purpose of this resolution is to adopt that same schedule as the subject matter index that the town is required to have under FOIL. So we would identify the LGS 1 schedule or retention schedule as the subject matter index for FOIL.
Right.
if
Well,
Somebody needs.
We already have an index.
Yeah, well, this would basically become your index. So
Right,
I
okay.
don't know what the town clerk's used in the past, but this would kind of substitute for whatever has been in place and make it available. It just has, it's a description by subject matter, so it's not a detailed list of every document, nor is it intended to be. But the public officers law requires just a list by subject matter of things that the town clerk and the town may have in the terms of records.
Okay. I'll read it therefore.
Can I ask one quick question before
Sure.
you read?
Yeah, yeah.
Are emails included somewhere in that retention list?
Yes.
They are?
Yes.
Okay.
Now therefore be it resolved that Section 1, the above whereas clauses are incorporated herein as if set forth in full. Section 2, the town board hereby adopts the New York State Archives Local Government Schedule, known as LGS-1, last adopted and effective April 1, 2022, as the town's subject matter list for purposes of the Freedom of Information Law. Section 3, the town clerk shall make such LGS-1 schedules available to persons who request same and may do so by providing a link to the LGS-1. Section 4, town supervisor or designee is authorized to take any and all actions necessary to carry out the provisions of this resolution. Section 5, the town shall annually include adoption of the LGS-1 as the subject matter list under the Freedom of Information Law in its reorganization meeting, but failure to do so shall not affect the status of the LGS-1 as a town subject matter. Section 6, this resolution shall be effective immediately.
Bingham will second.
Call the question.
Bingham, aye?
Scangarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, aye. Val, was this for your grant? I didn't hear. Was this for the purposes of the archive grant?
Brian, all right, so moved. That's to come from the, I'll do it. It's new business. Val, will it mess you up if I do it now? It won't? Okay. So we have a resolution that I'll let Brian speak to. It's the right-of-way declaration. And it was basically a clause in the approval process for the 97 Seven Springs Road.
Thank you, Supervisor. So this, as you stated, was a condition of a resolution of approval from the Town Planning Board concerning 94 Seven Springs Road, which requires them to dedicate a right-of-way portion on the front of their property adjoining Seven Springs Road for town highway purposes. So this basically is the agreement and dedication documents that the town would be approving in order to satisfy that condition before the Planning Board and to give the town that right-of-way.
Make a motion authorizing the supervisor to sign the right-of-way declaration and dedication agreement.
I'll second.
Call the question.
Bingham, aye.
Scancarello, aye.
Cardone, aye. Okay, so moved. Item 8.1 is a resolution approving short-term rental application of 21 Front Street, SBL 16-3-1. So, I would like to approve this resolution with a caveat that and I want to discuss this right now before we go through the motion process, but the owner would be required to present to the building inspector a copy of the deed that approves the lot line change to essentially get his permit.
No short-term rentals would be able to take place until that deed was presented.
Correct.
Thank you.
My suggestion, Supervisor, is when you get to the resolution, which you should have, is
I have it.
you can add a number 7 on those, because those are conditions basically in Section 3, subject to the following conditions. So if you want to just add that as a number 7, whatever you had just stated, as another condition, you can do
Okay.
it there.
All right. So I will read with therefores. The above whereas clauses are incorporated herein as if set forth in full. That was Section 1. Section 2, pursuant to Town Code 40-8F, the Town Board hereby determines that 1, adequate parking facilities are provided to meet the parking requirement, of 4 off-street parking spaces which are provided in a manner that does not impact the residential character of the neighborhood. Number 2, under Section 2, no new construction or expansion is proposed relating to the STR. Section 3, the structure and lot are conforming to the requirements of Chapter 40 of the Town Code, and that the lot and structure are not considered existing non-conforming uses or buildings. Can I add that there, Brian?
Well,
No, that's not, I'm sorry.
those are your statutory findings.
Yep. Section 4, adjoining residences and their yards are generally afforded a reasonable degree of privacy from view by occupants of the proposed vacation residence or partial vacation residence by the imposition of landscaping and privacy fencing. Number 5 in Section 2, the number of permitted short-term rentals surrounding proposed property are not excessive in number so as to result in adverse character impacts to the principal residences in the neighborhood. Section 3, the Town Board hereby approves a short-term rental application for 21 Front Street, subject to the following conditions. 1, continued compliance with the provisions of the Town Code, Chapter 40, and New York Residential and Fire Code with respect to rental location. And 2, under Section 3, continued maintenance of the existing screening of the property and parking area. 3, under Section 3, the approval of this application permit shall expire 3 years from the date of this resolution pursuant to Town Code 40-9, and 4, under Section 3, that the applicant intends to renew the permit after the 3-year period. The applicant submits a renewal application at least 60 days prior to the expiration of the permit. And 5, under Section 3, the permit may not be transferred except as indicated in the Town's Code 40-16. And 6, applicant must, under Section 3, 6, the applicant must report any proposed changes in circumstances to the building department that would alter the analysis of the factors set forth in Town Code 40-8F, relevant to the approval of short-term. And Section 7, prior to receiving the permit, the applicant will provide a copy of the filed deed to the building department, whereupon at that point a permit will be issued.
Was there something Councilwoman Bingham added to that last condition?
That was it.
That was it, okay.
You know what? Let me reread section number 6 under Section 3, because I didn't realize it went on. Applicant must report any proposed changes in circumstances to the building department that would alter of the analysis of the factors set forth in Town Code 40-8F, relevant to the approval of a short-term rental permit, except that the applicant should not be required to report any change in the number of short-term rentals surrounding the property. Town Code 40-8F 5. Section 4, the town supervisor or any other officer or employee as directed by the town supervisor is hereby authorized to take any and all necessary actions to carry out the provisions of this resolution. Section 5, the resolution shall be effective immediately. Call the question.
Hingham, aye.
Second.
Gangarello, aye.
Oh,
Cardone, aye.
sorry, did we call a second and everything? I just wanted to make one comment, and then I'm going to vote, but, just I spoke with the O'Sheas, and they're very concerned about noise and the ecosystem of the lake, and obviously, we would very much appreciate not getting any complaints from you, as we want you to have your small business and succeed, but we also care deeply about your neighbors and our constituents. So I think I had mentioned to you if you'd be willing to have and keep and display for your guests a little maybe booklet or a pamphlet designed by me or the Conservation Commission about not feeding the ducks and other concerns that she might have, and that would be a good compromise. He agrees, so Richards and I.
Second that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Sal. The only thing I would tell you is that's not a formal.
No,
that's
it's not, yeah.
That's a request, and I would take what suggestions they have, and you put them in the format for yourself. Don't let anyone else write the book for you.
I mean, if he's willing to take a pamphlet designed by anybody, he can take the pamphlet. I'll make it a nice pamphlet. I'll put a duck on it.
Okay, public comment.
8.2.
What's that? Oh, sorry, sewer petition and application. So, I spoke with the Transportation Corporation. We have a resolution that Brian typed up, and the numbers I gave Brian, the Transportation Corporation came back with 17% this year and a 15% increase next year. To me, that seems amicable. It's actually, this happened today at like 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. I had met with the homeowners association. I did call the president of the homeowners association this afternoon. I didn't get a call back. Let me just double check to make sure. No, I did not. So, my thought is to put in a motion approving a rate increase this year, because we have to do this by the 26th, of 17% this year and 15% next year.
Spread it over a 3-year period?
Want to go any more?
Sure.
Transportation
That motion,
Corporation.
you want me to second?
Yeah, just second it.
Second.
Discussion. So, they didn't want to go any further than 2, you were saying? Yes. And I was very concerned that, the HOA, is this a letter from the entire HOA or just yes, it is. It's the entire
HOA, yeah.
president, and they have specifically asked for an independent audit, and this is what was brought up last time. I mean, did we get an explanation of why they weren't increasing rates more, gradually? Why is it a 28% increase in 1 year, including a cushion, which I don't believe that they had previously from the last documentation I saw. And yet they ask not to go any further than 3. This seems like we should have been mitigating this earlier. If this was before us for approval earlier, why?
This has been mitigated for about 2 months. If you want to try to bash me and trash me, just come out and say it.
Very defensive. I'm telling you that I want to know why. I want to know why their rates are disparate compared to other communities. They're asking us to look into it. So what was the answer? Why are their prices higher compared to other residents?
Was the actual cost of operation, repairs and maintenance?
for their actual systems, its equipment costs.
Look at, you have the numbers in front of you. Look at the
I
numbers.
am looking at them.
You
It just
could- you've
says
had
it's
them for months,
increased.
you
It
could
just says
figure
it's
them out.
increased by 211% since 2014, and the dramatic rise warrants closer scrutiny. So they want an independent audit of the MRSC's expenditures to ensure these costs are justified and to identify potential inefficiencies. And the last time I spoke with Mr. Nugent publicly, he said that we could request documentation, not require it, to take a closer look at this. And you said no, but I have statutory oversight duties, and I've received this letter, so why wouldn't I have been able to reach out and receive those documents from my official position?
What other
to bring that
documents are
here?
you looking for?
I would ask exactly for what this letter proposes. I just want their books and the justification on paper, why it doesn't, I agree that this is very opaque. It's just, oh, well, the equipment and the repairs and the maintenance. Okay, well, wouldn't you have been able to predict that? You're saying that an entire system broke down? Is that what you were saying, that it was an unexpected breakdown and that now they're incurring that
No,
cost?
never said that.
Well, so if it's an equipment cost, wouldn't they be able to bond it and bring that out over more years' time? If it's really related to actual physical conditions, wouldn't they be able to stretch that expense further out if they're able to purchase the equipment on a loan?
Transportation Corporation allowed to bond?
I don't know the answer to that, whether or not they can.
So we can either pass this resolution, say nothing, and that means we are agreeing with the Transportation Corporation, or try to come back and negotiate within, but we have to approve it, and it's 5 days.
But you got it reduced to 17% the first year,
Yes,
15 the second,
17,
the-
17 and 15.
15, right. So
Yeah, with
that's
no
a big
action,
decrease.
that'll be 28% if you don't act, just to be
Right.
clear. 28% for 2025.
We do a conditional approval. I mean, I'm really just, if it is really particularly the equipment repairs and maintenance costs, then I'm really just stunned that they couldn't extend that over.
They've lost an estimated $50,000 last year. After receiving this letter, I think there was another $20,000 that was spent in total in the last 2 or 3 months.
Could we do some kind of conditional approval that we motion for this lower tax schedule and attempt further negotiations and then approve any lower rate we receive?
Well, the problem with that is if you do a conditional approval, and they can simply reject it, and they get 28% in 2025.
No, the conditional approval would be, we want to approve the rate schedule that Supervisor Cardone has stated unless we get a better, lower term in the time before the 26th.
And you're kind of approving something we're not going to know, but if it's lower, in
Yep.
other words.
Lower tax rate and is spread out further. I mean, we could specify that we're looking for 3
Want to
years.
revise this one just to say a maximum of 17% the first year and 15% the second year, you can do that so that it could be lower.
Yeah.
But you just can
Yeah.
insert the terms maximum where the resolution talks about each year, not to exceed, in other words, 17%. So they'd certainly be free, however that may happen, to impose a lower rate.
Asking me to go,
It's up, do you want me to modify your motion with that? I mean, it's up to you, or is that amenable? I think that we share the goal that we don't want to negatively impact these taxpayers, so.
what I asked is, are you asking me to go back to the Transportation Corporation?
Oh, then yes.
And how will this essentially be finalized, Brian? If I don't,
Well, we're approving.
No, I
yeah.
think that what I'm suggesting is you take the resolution as written, except that it's going to be 1715, and the language there will be that the rate approved, determined by the town is not to exceed 17% in year one, not to exceed 15% in year two. If you have a conversation with them and it ends up being 14 and 14, that falls within the resolution that's been approved. If they were, to not agree with this resolution in general, then they would have to file an Article 78 based, on the language you're adopting tonight.
Well, because this would be exactly what he agreed to.
No, but not the lower number wouldn't be,
No,
is what
but
I'm
it's not
saying.
in there. It's not to exceed, so it has the cushion of potentially negotiating lower. And then how would we account for the third year?
no third year.
There is no third year.
I'm saying at this time, there's no third year, but if he goes back and he says, hey, I want it to be stretched over a three-year period and by some kind of,
That gets more complicated
Yeah.
because we don't have a third year in here, or a number to even put in there.
exactly.
So
So-
that creates a problem because then they can just say no, and now they get 28% in 2025.
I'm just saying it's unlikely, so just to do our due diligence for these taxpayers, which have, plainly written out in a very well-worded letter, I would like it to say not to exceed, and I would like Supervisor Cardone to try one more time on behalf of the town of Monroe and Mansion Ridge taxpayers, and at least we can say that we did.
Okay, so we have that motion in front of us. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Call the question.
Bingham, aye.
Scangarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
The not to exceed language?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Richardson, aye.
Okay. Public's comment?
No public comment.
No public comment? No executive session? Okay, motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Call the question.
Bingham, aye.
Scangarello, aye.
Cardone, aye.
Richardson, aye.